When ISIS first emerged, most people underestimated them. But something far darker took shape very soon. Town squares, prisons, and even ancient ruins were turned into stages of death. It wasn't just a campaign of violence, but a calculated system of terror designed to break entire communities. And the damage it caused continues to haunt those who survived it. It started in 2004 with a man named Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, a Jordanian militant who shaped what ISIS would later become. At that time, ISIS did not exist as a group with land, borders, or flags. But Zarqawi was already showing the world what kind of violence this movement would be built on. In Iraq, he began using extreme brutality as a message. He didn't just kill his victims, he filmed it. He turned murder into something public, planned, and meant to be watched. One of the earliest victims was an American civilian contractor named Nick Berg. In May 2004, Berg was filmed sitting on the ground in front of masked men. He was forced to calmly say his name on camera. Moments later, his head was cut off. The video spread fast across the internet and news channels. People around the world were stunned. What disturbed viewers was not only the killing itself, but how cold and deliberate it felt. The execution was staged, filmed, and shared to scare people far beyond Iraq. That same summer, Zarqawi personally carried out another beheading. This time, the victim was another American, Eugene Armstrong. Again, the killing was filmed. Again, it was meant to be seen. Zarqawi wanted fear to spread faster than any attack on the ground. His cruelty was not limited to foreigners. He openly crucified people in public and ordered the execution of anyone he labeled an infidel. Sunnis, Shiites, civilians, aid workers, and soldiers were all targeted. To him, anyone outside his narrow beliefs was an enemy. Because of this extreme and public brutality, he became known as the Sheik of the Slaughterers, a name that reflected both how he killed and how often he did it. Over time, Zarqawi pushed warfare into a darker place. By many accounts, he launched a new level of horror in modern conflict. He made videotaped executions normal. He used mass killings and public punishments to terrorize entire communities. The so-called Islamic punishments he used came from ancient interpretations of religious law, but he carried them out with modern tools and modern media. Beheadings, crucifixions, burning people alive, stonings, and other brutal executions became part of his system. This was medieval cruelty mixed with modern technology, filmed clearly and shared widely. His campaign of terror destabilized large parts of Iraq and proved that fear itself could be a powerful weapon. In June 2006, Zarqawi was killed in a US airstrike, but his death did not stop the violence he started. Fast forward to 2013. The Syrian civil war was tearing the country apart, and Iraq was still deeply unstable. Out of this chaos, a group calling itself the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, began seizing large areas of land. Town by town, city by city, they pushed forward. By mid-2014, ISIS controlled roughly a third of both Syria and Iraq. They declared a caliphate and named their leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, as the caliph. With land came power, and with power came bloodshed on a massive scale. As ISIS stormed cities, they immediately began killing anyone they saw as enemies or infidels. In July 2014, they captured Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city. What followed was a wave of executions. Captured soldiers and civilians were killed in large numbers. Witnesses later described seeing dozens of severed heads placed on spikes and bodies dumped into mass graves. These killings were meant to be seen and to be remembered. Around the same time, ISIS attacked Sinjar and nearby villages, targeting the Yazidi population. Thousands of Yazidi men were executed, along with some women, and many of their bodies were dumped into mass graves. Thousands more were kidnapped. Women and girls were taken away and forced into sexual slavery. When areas were later retaken, horrifying images came out. Investigators found mass graves filled with bones and skulls. Severed heads were uncovered in the dirt. The United Nations later officially recognized these crimes as genocide. In Baghdad and other areas, police officers and soldiers who refused to pledge loyalty to ISIS were executed on the spot. In provinces like Diyala, ISIS hung banners and signs warning people that disobedience meant death. These warnings were not empty threats. Entire communities learned quickly that resistance led to execution. By this stage, ISIS had already murdered tens of thousands of civilians and abducted thousands more. Fear spread faster than the group itself. There was no safe place, not in cities, not in villages, and not even in homes. Executions became a daily reality under ISIS rule. Killings were used to keep people silent and obedient. A later United Nations report described ISIS's campaign as an effort to control civilians through terror. Their rule was built entirely on fear. Even the smallest act of defiance could result in public torture or death. Children were not protected from this violence. Some were forced to watch executions, while others were trained to carry them out. Later videos showed child soldiers shooting prisoners under direct ISIS orders. At first, much of the world only heard rumors about these killings, but ISIS made sure those rumors were confirmed. They released propaganda videos showing executions in graphic detail, always on their own terms. These videos were carefully staged and deliberately shocking. Many people watching from afar didn't realize how extreme this violence would become, or how central executions would be to ISIS's identity. What had started years earlier with Zarqawi was now unfolding on a massive scale, and it was only the beginning. In the middle of all the chaos, foreign journalists and aid workers working in Syria and Iraq became prime targets for ISIS. These were people who had come to report on the war or help civilians, but ISIS saw them as powerful symbols. One of them was James Wright Foley, an American journalist who'd been kidnapped in Syria back in 2012 while doing his job. For nearly 2 years, very little was known about his fate. Then on August 19, 2014, a video suddenly appeared online. It showed Foley kneeling on the ground, wearing an orange jumpsuit. An ISIS militant stood beside him holding a knife. Foley spoke briefly to the camera, clearly under pressure. Moments later, the video cut away as he was beheaded. This became the first recorded execution of an American by ISIS. When the news spread, Foley's family explained that he had dedicated his life to reporting on human suffering. The shock did not fade, because ISIS didn't stop. Just 2 weeks later, on September 2, 2014, another execution video was released. This time, the victim was Steven Sotloff, another American journalist. Like Foley, Sotloff had been kidnapped while reporting in the region. He was shown kneeling in the same way, and he was beheaded on camera. He became the second American hostage killed this way. ISIS claimed both killings were punishment for actions taken by the United States. By now it was clear these weren't isolated acts. They were carefully planned messages meant to provoke fear and draw global attention. As these videos spread, people across the world watched in disbelief. Governments, news organizations, and ordinary viewers condemned the killings. Leaders in the United States openly vowed to take military action against ISIS. But the violence continued. British aid worker David Haines, who had been captured in Syria, was beheaded in a video released in mid-September 2014. Just weeks later, on October 3, 2014, another video showed the execution of Alan Henning, a British taxi driver who had traveled to Syria to help civilians. His killing hit especially hard because he was not a soldier or a journalist, but a volunteer trying to do good. Around the same time, American aid worker Peter Kassig, who had spent years helping war victims, appeared briefly in the final moments of Alan Henning's execution video. Kassig was later executed as well. By the end of 2014, ISIS had released a horrifying series of execution videos. Americans, Britons, Japanese hostages, and aid workers from different countries had all been killed. Each video followed a similar pattern, making them feel like part of a deliberate campaign rather than separate crimes. ISIS wanted every execution filmed and shared. The goal was to spread fear as far and as fast as possible. The constant exposure made these killings feel like a live broadcast of violence. For ISIS, this attention also attracted new recruits who were drawn to the group's image of power and brutality. By 2015, ISIS pushed its violence even further and crossed lines many did not think could be crossed. In January of that year, ISIS captured a Jordanian Air Force pilot named Muaz al-Qaseba after his plane crashed during a mission. Weeks later, while news was spreading that Japan was trying to negotiate the release of a Japanese hostage, ISIS responded in the most shocking way possible. On February 3, 2015, they released a video showing Qaseba locked inside a metal cage. The cage was set on fire while he was still alive. His screams could be heard as he burned to death. This execution stunned the world. It was ISIS deliberately showing that they were willing to kill in the most painful and extreme ways imaginable. Jordan reacted quickly by executing a prisoner in retaliation, but the damage had already been done. The image of a man burned alive inside a cage became one of the most disturbing symbols of ISIS brutality. Just days earlier, ISIS had already released another execution video. On January 31, 2015, the victim was Kenji Goto, a Japanese journalist. Goto had traveled back into Syria trying to help rescue a friend who had also been taken hostage. Instead, he was captured himself. ISIS filmed his execution and released the video to the public. In Japan, the footage was replayed across television networks, and the country went into mourning. By this point, the pattern was clear. ISIS was using hostage executions on camera as a tool. Sometimes it was meant to pressure governments. Other times it was pure propaganda. Throughout 2015, their victims were not limited to Westerners. Egyptians, Nigerians, Syrians, and many others were executed after being labeled as spies or apostates, often with no evidence and no real trial. As the year went on, ISIS began showing that beheadings were only one part of their violence. In June 2015, they released a video that showed executions carried out using cages, explosives, firearms, and fire. Men accused of spying were locked inside a metal cage and slowly lowered into a filthy pool of water until they drowned. Others had explosive devices strapped around their necks and were blown apart. Some prisoners were forced into cars that were then set on fire. The video was carefully produced to showcase cruelty as entertainment and intimidation. From early on, ISIS loved to film executions. Their soldiers waved phones while cutting throats. They posted videos online immediately. Casual narration or news reports can't capture the raw fear of those films. ISIS knew this. A short video of an execution could rack up millions of views. It was shocking, so people watched it. And the cruelty made the group famous. To ISIS, every public killing was a theatrical warning. They often executed people publicly in conquered towns. For instance, in conquered Mosul or in Raqqa, they held open trials in stadiums. Accused people, sometimes blindfolded, were led out as a crowd watched. Judges, wearing black turbans and explosives belts, ordered executions. There were videos of men kneeling, hands tied, before being shot or beheaded. The international videos targeted governments and the public directly. When an American or a European was executed, the crowd who could see it was global. ISIS fighters often spoke in flawless English to explain their actions to the camera. Nobody could watch such videos without horror. Each time a hostage's life was snuffed out, world leaders promised revenge. The West launched an international air campaign partly because of those images. ISIS wanted to terrorize, but they also united the world against them. By late 2015, after ISIS began losing territory like Kobani and other northern cities, their violence against civilians became even more brutal. They punished communities they believed had turned against them. In and around Mosul, ISIS rounded up Christian minorities. Videos later surfaced showing hundreds of Christian men dressed in orange jumpsuits, kneeling in rows. One by one, they were beheaded on camera. One of the most shocking videos showed 21 Egyptian Coptic Christian laborers who had been kidnapped in Libya. They were marched onto a beach, forced to kneel, and shown praying quietly in Arabic. ISIS fighters stood behind them and cut their throats. Captured soldiers and police officers also faced brutal deaths. Any member of the military who fought ISIS and was captured was often executed immediately. Over time, mass graves began to appear across Iraq and Syria. One example is Hawija in Iraq. When Iraqi forces retook the town in 2017, they discovered a mass grave containing 260 bodies of police troops. These men had been shot and chopped up. It was a clear act of revenge by ISIS. The group also posted lists online naming people they accused of being spies. Sometimes these were just poor farmers or low-level officials accused of supporting the government. Once named, those people were hunted down. If caught, they were usually killed on the spot. Guns, knives, and explosives were the most common methods. By the time ISIS lost Mosul in 2017, and Raqqa later that same year, the full scale of the damage was impossible to ignore. During just 2 years of control, public executions and secret killings had destroyed entire communities. Hundreds of thousands of people had either fled their homes or were dead. ISIS was officially labeled a criminal organization responsible for some of the worst war crimes in modern history. By 2018, the group's so-called caliphate had collapsed. They no longer ruled major cities or large areas of land. But even as ISIS was defeated on the battlefield, the horror they left behind didn't disappear. During the final battles for cities like Mosul and Raqqa, ISIS often executed civilians, captured rebels, or anyone they suspected of betrayal before retreating. When they finally fled, they left behind physical proof of their crimes that could not be erased. In Mosul in 2017, investigators began uncovering mass graves. These weren't isolated sites. One pit alone contained around 500 bodies, mostly Iraqi civilians and former soldiers who'd been shot by ISIS. Other graves held villagers whose bodies showed signs of decapitation. In Raqqa, Syria, excavation teams made equally disturbing discoveries. They found wells where ISIS had forced victims inside and then buried them alive. These sites showed that executions were not only public acts of terror, but also quiet killings meant to erase people completely. As troops moved through the ruins, they found the tools ISIS had used to carry out executions. Among the rubble were suitcases filled with bomb vests, knives still stained with blood, and metal cages like the ones used in filmed drownings. These discoveries made it clear that ISIS had not acted randomly. Their violence was planned and organized. In 2018, when the town of Baghouz, the last major ISIS stronghold, was captured, residents showed journalists photographs of fresh graves and bodies found with their hands tied. These were signs of executions carried out by ISIS fighters, even in their final days. For families left behind, the end of ISIS control did not bring peace. Many returned to empty homes and destroyed neighborhoods. A Yazidi survivor later told the journalists that ISIS would beat and behead people in public simply to remind everyone what happened to those who disobeyed. Former prisoners described hearing children scream as they were tortured for no reason other than cruelty. These stories came out slowly as survivors felt safe enough to speak. Years later, courts in Europe and Iraq began holding ISIS members accountable. In 2020, 2 militants from the ISIS cell nicknamed the Beatles were convicted for the murders of hostages, including James Foley and Steven Solov. In Iraq, many ISIS executioners were put to death for their crimes. Still, not all were caught. Some leaders were killed in raids, and others disappeared. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the group's leader, died in 2019 after blowing himself up during a raid. Even with ISIS broken as a military force, the pain has never truly faded. Many families have only been able to recover fragments of bones instead of full bodies. Closure remains impossible for many. The 21 Coptic Christians murdered on the Libyan beach were later honored as saints by their church. But their families continue to live with the memory of how they died. In late 2020 and throughout 2021, trials began for those involved in the beach executions and other massacres. Survivors and witnesses stepped forward to tell what they saw and endured. Today, newspapers and memorials keep the memory alive. The names of the executed are carved into memorials. They were ordinary people, caught in a nightmare, and the world mourns their loss. Even though the ISIS caliphate is gone, lessons remain. Soldiers and reporters study those videos now to teach the world. International law fights to bring war criminals to justice. The group wanted to spread terror. Instead, their story became a warning.